Hey everybody, welcome to Moment of Clarity. This is a tough episode for me. It's just not easy to say. But I've been watching MSNBC and CNN and NPR, and I read the New York Times this morning, and it seems with great certainty that the Russians are coming. Apparently they're here. There was one under my bed this morning. You know, I just think nobody should get too scared. You just got to be ready. If they show up at your place, one thing is you do is you can if you turn the heat up. They don't like hot weather. They're usually very large, bearded men, and they wear the fuzzy hats. I mean, you don't want to make it uncomfortable for yourself, so you want to hit like that 82, 83 area. Because you get up into 90, that's not going to be good for you. But right around 82, 83, they'll start sweating profusely and they'll become very uncomfortable. And then they'll usually leave. They'll leave at that point. Another thing you do is just make sure that they don't have access to vodka, because that's like fuel to them. It's like lithium-ion batteries. They'll just drink that stuff. And Mucilix, weirdly. I didn't know that one until the other day, but if you just keep the vodka and Mucilix locked up, then they don't have energy to kill us all and eat our babies and get Trump reelected. So those are some of the main tips. And I know this is a big shift for me. It's a big change for me. But look, the Russians are coming, and apparently, because I've been watching the MSNBC, the only way to deal with this, the only way to beat them, to defeat them at their game, other than getting them out from under the bed, that was step one. But step two is just never question anything about our electoral process. I mean, granted, it's an electoral system that the large Harvard study said was the worst in the Western world, but do not talk about that. You are a Russian asset if you even mention that fact. Also, the only way to beat them is you have to vote for one of the corporate Wall Street funded candidates. You have to. So here's the thing. The Russians, according to the MSNBC, CNN, CBS, all the others, the Russians want to re-elect Donald Trump, but they also want to get Bernie Sanders elected, which sound like two very different things. Like, you're like, wow, that sounds like they want completely opposite things. But you just got to trust me on this. They want those two things at the same time. The Russians want that. It's kind of like saying I want to be a heroin addict and I also want to be a devout Mormon. And I just need to do those two things. But you don't have to understand this. You just have to know how this works, okay? You don't ask questions. So the only way to beat them is to elect one of the Wall Street corporate candidates, okay? Biden, Buttigieg, Bloomberg, any of them, Klobuchar, any of those will work. Okay? You just have to get behind those, because otherwise you're helping Russia. As long as the candidate believes in endless war and endless Wall Street greed and just environmental destruction, as long as they believe in all those things, big pharma, health insurance, exploiting your family, as long as they believe in those things, then we are beating Russia. As long as you're struggling to pay your health care bills and your student loans have destroyed your life, then we're beating Russia. That means we're beating Russia. I know it's counterintuitive, it's confusing, but just listen to me. If you are drowning in student debt, we're winning, Russia losing, okay? If our environment collapses around us because we put in office a corporate candidate that doesn't give a fuck about the environment, then we're winning, Russia losing. Our environment collapses, fucking nothing will grow, planet burns. That means we're winning, Russia losing. I know, there's a lot of questions. I'm just telling you what I've learned from the MSNBCs and the CNNs and the NPRs and the NBCs. All right, so now I'm going to go through a list of things you cannot do not do, okay? Because questioning our electoral system at all it's pro-Russian, it's being a Russian asset. So do not talk about how the primaries were rigged in 2016, even though that was revealed in emails. Do not mention it, act like it didn't happen, okay? Do not mention that the DNC said in court that they have the right to rig the primaries, that they are their primaries and they can rig them whenever they want. Don't talk about that. Never happened, okay? Do not question the voting machines, that most of them run on a hidden code that was created by a corporation, and they will never reveal it to us, so we have no idea what is actually happening inside the black boxes of our voting machines. Never talk about that. Never mention it. Do not, in fact, just scrub it from your mind right now that I just said that. Just do not even think about that. Okay? Do not go see the audit of the voting machines, which is supposedly publicly viewable in most states. Do not go look at that. Do not talk about it. Don't even acknowledge that there is an audit of the voting machines in order to see whether they're legitimate. Does not exist. It does. I don't even know what you're talking about. What audit? I didn't hear there was an audit. Do not question why the Iowa caucus and the Nevada caucus are run on apps that were created 2 months ago by DNC staffers or former Hillary staffers. Don't question that. Don't talk about that. Don't ask why the Buttigieg campaign donated over $40,000 to create that app in Iowa. Do not talk about that. That if you talk about that, you're helping the Russians, okay? Do not question why sometimes the results don't line up with the polls at all, like in the last primary in 2016. Do not question why the exit polls showed that Bernie Sanders was often winning by 10 or 12 points, and then he'd either lose by a point or, scrape by it, win by 1 point. Don't question any of that. Don't ask why we aren't seeing exit polls this time around. Do not talk about that, okay? That is straight up Russian. If you talk about that, it is more Russian than one of those dolls with the little doll inside and little doll inside and little doll inside and little doll inside. Okay? It's more Russian than that if you are talking about it. And also, definitely don't question why a billionaire racist Republican oligarch is allowed to run in the Democratic race for president. Do not talk about that. Okay? Look, just because he's a racist, sexist, billionaire Republican does not mean he shouldn't get the chance to be the Democratic nominee. Okay? Do not talk about Michael Bloomberg. At least not in that way. You can talk about him in a positive way. If you say something nice about him, that's not helping the Russians. You say something negative about Bloomberg, that's very Russian of you. So that's my list. Do not talk about any of those things. Wipe them from your mind. If you talk about those things, it is straight up Russian, okay? And if a friend or a neighbor or someone you know starts talking about these things, then you need to use this patented anti-Russian defense mechanism, okay? It's, first of all, you take your 2 fingers, okay? Take your 2 fingers and you stick them in the ears, and then go, listen, go, don't stick them in your ears yet because I'm still talking, and then go, na 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 na. Okay, and you got to do that until the person walks away or punches you or something. Okay, very important. That technique always works. Do that the whole time they're talking, and don't stop for anything. Okay, if you're missing a hand, then maybe you can put something in the ear. I don't know. Maybe if your feet stretch that far, I can't do that. I've tried, but if you can do that, that'll probably make them go away even quicker. If you've got your baby toes in each ear and yelling na na na, that'll get them away real quick. Long story short, be vigilant, folks, and obey the mainstream media. Okay, they will give you your next instructions. Just please, I beg of you, obey them. Anything they say, it's accurate. Don't talk about all the stuff I just said. Okay, I'm going to drop the character here for a minute because it's driving me nuts. The Russians aren't in the top 1,000 things that have corrupted and ruined our elections, our primaries, our general election. I mean, just think about it. Just in 2016, did the Russians close polling places in specific areas of the country? For example, in Arizona, in areas that were more likely to vote for Bernie Sanders? Did the Russians do that? Did the Russians purge 200,000 likely Bernie voters in Brooklyn alone, which the New York Board of Elections ultimately admitted to in court? Did the Russians cause the machines to be significantly off from the exit polls? Did the Russians make sure the machines would be built by corporations that would never reveal the code to the American public, which it is supposed to be accountable to? Did the Russians use superdelegates to make sure Hillary Clinton would win the primaries? Did the Russians give Donald Trump 23 times as much of mainstream media coverage as Bernie Sanders during the 2016 primaries, and 10 times as much as Hillary Clinton? Was that the Russians? And that's just a small sample of how incredibly fucked our system is, and how it's not the Russians. They're not even in the top 1,000 reasons you should be upset about our electoral system. You are being manipulated. Don't let it continue. That's your moment of clarity, folks. If you find it important, please share it. Also, I'm coming to perform live stand-up comedy in 17 cities in the US, UK, and Canada. Those details are at redactedtour.com. You can find out which cities and everything else. That's for my new book tour. It's called Bullet Points and Punchlines. All right, keep fighting.